Stargirl Chapter 19, page 72 of the PDF. The Amish in Pennsylvania have a word for it. What's that? I said. Shunning. I was at Archie's. I had to talk to someone. Well, that's what's happening. The shunnee, so to speak, has gotten himself in Dutch with the church. So he's excommunicated. The whole community is in on it. Unless he repents, nobody speaks to him for the rest of his life. Not even his family. What? That's right. Not even his family. What about his wife? Wife, kids, everybody. His pipe had gone out. He relit it with a stick match. I believe in the idea is to drive him away. But some stay, continue working the farm, having dinner. If he passes the salt to his wife, she ignores it. If the bishop had his way, the pigs and chickens would ignore him. It's as if he does not exist. I nodded. I know the feeling. We were on the back porch. I stared out at Senor, Saguaro. He said, "Does it happen to you when you're not with her?" "No," I said. "At least I don't think so. But when I'm with her, I feel like it's aimed at me, too." A small pipe cloud left the corner of his mouth. He smiled sadly. Poor dolphin, caught in a tuna net. I picked up Barney, the Paleocene rodent skull. I wondered if someone would be holding Cinnamon's head 60 million years from now. So what should I do? Archie waved his hand. "Oh, well, that's the easy part. Stay away from her. Your problem's kaput." I sneered. Great advice. You know it's not that easy. He did know, of course, but he wanted me to say it. I told him about the Valentine, the night in her driveway, the walk in the desert. The question that came to mind sounded silly, but it persisted. "Do you believe in enchanted places?" He took the pipe from his mouth and looked straight at me. "Absolutely." I was confused. "But you're a scientist, a man of science, a man of bones. You can't be up to your eyeball in bones and not believe in enchanted places." I looked at Barney. I ran my fingertips along the hard line of his 2-inch jaw, rough like a cat's tongue. 60 million years in my hands. I looked at Archie. "Why can't she be," he finished for me, "like everybody else?" He stood up and stepped down from the porch onto the desert for his backyard. Except for the shed where he kept digging his digging tools was the desert. Nature did the landscaping. I put down Barney and joined him. We ambled towards Senor Saguaro. "Not like everybody here," I said. "Not exactly. Not totally. But, Archie." I stopped. He stopped. I turned full face to him. My thoughts and feelings were a wild, conflicting jumble. After staring stupidly at him for a long time, I blurted, "She cheers for the other team." Archie pulled the pipe from his mouth, as if to better digest my words. He raised one finger in the air and nodded solemnly. "Ah, yes." We resumed walking. We walked on past the tool shed, past Senor Saguaro. Occasionally, I picked up a stone and flung it toward the purple maricapas. Archie said, almost in a whisper, "She's not easy to put into words, is she?" I shook my head. "An unusual girl," he said, "could see that from the first. And her parents as ordinary, in a nice way, as could be. How did this girl come to be? I used to ask myself, sometimes I thought she should be teaching me. She seems to be in touch with something that the rest of us are missing." He looked at me. I nodded. He turned the mahogany bowl of his pipe upside down and raped it into his knuckle. A small stream of ash spilled into the thicket of dead mesquite. He pointed the pipe stem at me. "You know, there's a place we call inhabit. We all inhabit. We don't much think about it. We're scarcely conscious of it. And it lasts for less than a minute a day." "What's that?" I said. "It's in the morning for most of us. It's that time, those few seconds where you're coming out of sleep, but we're not really awake yet. For those few seconds, we're something more primitive than what we are about to become. We have just slept the sleep of our most distant ancestors, and something of them in their world still clings to us. For those few moments, we are unformed, uncivilized. We are not the people we know as ourselves, but creatures more in tune with a tree than a keyboard. We are entitled, unnamed, natural, suspended between was and will be, the tadpole before the frog, the worm before the butterfly. We are, for brief moments, anything and everything we could be. And then he pulled out his patch and repacked his pipe. Cherry scent flew. He struck a match. The pipe bowl, like some predator or seducer, drew down the flame. And then, we open our eyes, and the day is before us, and he snapped his fingers. We become ourselves. Like so many of Archie's words, they seem not to enter through my ears, but settle on my skin, there to burrow like tiny eggs awaiting the rain of my maturity, when they would hatch and I would at last understand. We walked in silence. Yellow brooms had appeared on a cactus, and for some reason, yellow blooms had appeared on a cactus, and for some reason, that made me incredibly sad. The purple of the mountains flowed like watercolor. They hate her, I said. He stopped, looked intently at me. He turned me around, and we headed back. He put his arm around my shoulder. Let's consult Senor Saguaro. Shortly, we were standing before the derelict giant. I never understood how Senor managed to convey a sense of dignity, majesty even, considering he had stick-rickety, see-through skeleton and the ridiculous leathery crumple of hide about his foot, his fallen breeches. Archie always spoke to him with respectful formality, as to a judge or visiting dignitary. Good day, Senor Saguaro, he began. I believe you know my friend and charter member of the Loyal Order of Stonebone, Mr. Borlock. He whispered an aside to me. I'm a little rusty, but I think I'll use Spanish now. He prefers it on delicate matters. He turned back to the cactus. Perse, Senor, Borlock aquí es la de un shunning de sus compadres estudiantes se el liceo. El obli principal del shunning es la enamorado del Señor Borlock, nuestra propia señorita Estela. El Estela en Borlock squad de preguntas. As Archie spoke, he looked up toward the elf-owl hole. Now he turned back to me and whispered. I asked for questions. Questions, I whispered. What about answers? But he was turning from me, tilting his head toward the great cactus, his finger on his lips. Shh. His eyes closed. I waited. At last he nodded and turned back to me. The esteemed Senor says there is only one question. What's that? I asked. He says it all boils down to this, if I'm translating correctly. Whose affection do you value more, hers or the others? The Senor says everything will follow from that. I wasn't sure I understood the Senor any more than I understood Archie half the time, but I said nothing and went home. In bed that night, as the moonlight reached high tide under my chin, I realized that in fact I understood the question perfectly. I just didn't want to answer it.